Brad Loncar is back with us here this afternoon from Loncar Investments. Brad, great to see you. We usually talk a lot of different companies. Today, let's hone it in on this story from Bloomberg about Astrazeneca and Gilead potentially in a big deal. Does AstraZeneca want them for remdesivir?
Well, we'll have to see. So first of all, I think AstraZeneca deserves a lot of credit. This is one of the best managed and best performing pharmaceutical companies out there right now. And I can't really blame them for trying this because their stock is a very valuable currency at the moment. And it probably would be smart for them to use this time to diversify a little bit. But speaking of remdesivir, I think that's a game stopper. I don't think this is a realistic transaction because I don't think it would be approved by the U.S. government. We're living in a different world post-COVID-19 right now. And this isn't about antitrust. They don't really have medicines that are overlapping, but you have to think of big biotech companies now from the standpoint of national security. So AstraZeneca is an Anglo-Swedish company. It's a world-class great company, of course. But given that remdesivir is the only approved COVID treatment in the world right now, I think that U.S. regulators, something that we have called the Committee on Foreign Investment in the United States, would take a real hard look at this, and there would just be political pressure. So I think I give AstraZeneca an A for effort, but I would be shocked if something like this goes through. And Gilead's other big business is HIV, which also comes with certain political considerations. So I'm not sure this one is realistic, but certainly caught all of our attention. It woke me up when I saw it. So we'll have to see if there's anything more that comes of it, but I would be very surprised, to be honest.
So what's the logic for the political, I can see the kind of hand-wringing around it, but to actually stop the deal, would it just, is this like a pride thing? Like, hey, we want the solution to be homebred?
It's not pride. I mean, think of when we were in the heat of the moment with COVID and how the U.S. government was stopping shipments of masks, for example. So to have such an important treatment for this emergency, which, may come roaring back in the fall, let's hope not, but you always have to be conservative and plan for the worst. You want a U.S. company to be in full control of that. So if, anything bad happens, you have more say over where that drug supply goes. So for that reason, countries are really, from a biotech industry standpoint, starting to turn insular and starting to be protective of their biotech sectors. I don't think this will really affect small acquisitions, if a company's trying to buy $1 billion cancer company or something. But for a company that's as big and as important as Gilead is, I think that the United States will view this as a national security asset. A year ago, we wouldn't be having this conversation, but this is one of those things after COVID-19 where we're definitely living in a different world. I think that large acquisitions, multinational acquisitions like this, are going to be very difficult in the future for these reasons.
Is there anything to be read into here about AstraZeneca's it's sort of endorsement then of remdesivir? Because there's still been some debate around the results and just how effective the treatment is for COVID-19. Should we interpret this either as investors or just interested participants of a sign that remdesivir is the real deal?
Yeah, I actually think this is more about Gilead's other businesses.
Okay.
We've talked in the past about these virus stocks and these virus companies. It's unlikely that Gilead will actually make a lot of money on remdesivir. They're giving out the first batch for free. And I think going forward in the future, as they sell it to governments for national stockpiles and things like that, they'll probably sell it at a price that's at cost. They haven't announced that price yet. We'll have to find out what that is in the future. So I don't think I don't think Astra is looking at them to acquire them for the revenue stream or the profit stream from this. Gilead has really been treading water for the last few years. It hasn't really been a hot stock since they came out with the hepatitis C treatment. And they have a new CEO now who's a great leader, Dan O'Day. And actually, one of the interesting things is the Astra CEO, Pascal Soriot, and Dan O'Day used to work together at Roche. Pascal Soriot was the head of Roche's pharmaceutical division, and Dan O'Day was the head of their diagnostics division. And I'll bet you that that relationship played into this overture. So it's kind of like, I think they were thinking of getting the band back together, so to speak. But with his leadership in place now, I think that Gilead can really thrive. And so this would have, number one, given Astra an opportunity to diversify their business. These things like HIV and antivirals, they're not really in right now. They're really heavily focused on cancer. So it would have been a diversification play. And also, I think Gilead's getting ready to return back to growth. And maybe remdesivir is a part of that. And so maybe they viewed this as an opportune time to strike. So I think it's definitely says something about the quality of Gilead and where Gilead's future might be. I think this is a really interesting time given this new leadership that they have. So in that way, it is an endorsement of Gilead itself.
What's interesting is the market caps of the companies aren't too far off. I mean, Gilead's a $100 billion stock now, given the run that it's had post, or rather during COVID, I should say. But it's really interesting what you point out. One, that remdesivir as a commercial draw is not very compelling at this point. That the probably existing most compelling cash flow from the HIV could be limiting in terms of the regulatory aspect. And then the kind of personal side of it, the relationship you're describing here between Dan O'Day from Gilead suggests that either we view this as kind of a relationship and a relationship of trust that these two companies could work well together, or maybe that some of the new kind of partnerships that Gilead has formed could potentially bear fruit. Will this be a big turning point then for Gilead, do you think?
I absolutely think so. And they've already started making some moves. So they bought a company called 47. That's a cancer company that has a drug that's called CD47. They paid over $5 billion for that earlier this year. A few weeks ago, they announced a partnership with a company called Arcus that's developing a lot of interesting new cancer medicines. And so, I think the company is really positioned for growth again. And you know, Dan O'Day's leadership has really been out there for everyone to see during this crisis. I think he's handled it as well as you could handle it from day one. I think with him at the helm that Gilead's really in a good place right now, without a doubt. And another interesting thing about AstraZeneca that not a lot of people know is this is the type of deal that they kind of have to do because it's a very highly levered company. Their drugs are selling well today and they're bringing in a lot of cash, but they still have a lot of debt and it's highly levered. So for example, last year they partnered with a Japanese company called Daiichi Sankyo on a cancer drug called Enhertu, which is terrific. Actually, they just had some data at ASCO that was outstanding. And just to partner with a Japanese company on one drug, AstraZeneca had to sell stock into the stock market and raise money because their leverage was too high. That's normally something that you see from a small biotech company. And so doing a merger like this, most certainly it would have likely been almost all stock, is the type of deal that they also kind of have to do at this moment. Gilead, on the other hand, has a great balance sheet and would have improved AstraZeneca's financials just by merging together with them.
Really interesting point, the kind of functioning that could clean up the pipes a little bit, kind of clean up the balance sheet for AstraZeneca. A fascinating situation here, and Brad will want to follow up when the next update comes. Appreciate it, Mr. Loncar, CEO at Loncar Investments. Great work by Brad, great details and refresher here on two of the big pharma plays.